Hey, it's Jessica from the Literacy Loft, and today we are talking about craft, which is the last C in the 5 C's of teaching writing with confidence in the 5-part video series. If you missed the first 4 videos, we talked about confidence, of course, community, consistency, communication, and today we are talking about craft. So, let's start. I've got 4 tips for you to help you grow your craft as a writing teacher and to help you grow your students' craft as writers. So everybody's growing in their craft today. So according to America's writing teacher, Roy Peter Clark, writing is a craft you can learn. And I 100% believe that, because even though we might feel like we don't know enough about teaching writing and that we're not good writers ourselves, we can all learn how to be better writers. Our students can learn how to be better writers. So let's just squash that right now. There's no I'm not a good writer anywhere. Don't worry about that, because you are a good writer and you write. You have to write emails. You probably write somewhere on social media. You write to your colleagues. So everybody's a writer. We've already talked about that. That was in one of our first 4 videos. So let's just squash that. But we can always grow as writing teachers, and we can grow as writers. So that's what we're focusing on in this last C, which is craft. Okay, let's get started. So tip 1 is identify a mentor text from each genre that you teach. So throughout the school year, I teach 4 genres and sometimes 5, but that's like an extra if I have time. So the 4 genres that I'm going to talk about today are narrative, informational, opinion, and poetry. So one of the reasons that you want to have at least one mentor text in each genre is that you want to pick books that you use over and over again. And you do that for several reasons. One, you're going to get familiar with that book. If you are constantly using that book to teach, then you're going to get really, really familiar with that book, and you're going to be able to see all kinds of things that you can teach out of this one text. So that's the first reason. Another reason is that if you were constantly referring to the same book or the same books all the time, your students are going to constantly hear those books, and they're going to get more and more familiar with those books. So I kind of think about, these are like the books that I've chosen and used year after year, but because I'm constantly talking about them and I share them with my students, then it becomes our books that we constantly go to throughout the year. So you can choose these books by thinking about the books that you really love and you really like, and or books that your students really love or really like. So those are the 2 big reasons that you want to choose some books that are just kind of like your go-to books. So like I kind of think about this like clothes. Like I have like certain clothes or like outfits that are like my go-to outfits. Like if it's Saturday and we're going out to lunch, I'm probably going to wear the same thing. So it is what it is. So think about it as like your go-to books. So I'm going to share with you mine just in case you don't have any off the top of your head that are your go-to books. And I'd love to hear in the comments like what your go-to books are for teaching each of these genres. Okay. So I actually don't have my favorite book for narrative writing, which is where I'm going to start. But one of my favorite books for narrative writing is The Sandwich Swap, and I'll link to it below. I used that at the very beginning of the year, and I've used it in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and I love it because it's a great beginning of the year book, and also it has some language and specific like writing crafts that you can use throughout the whole year, and the lead and the ending they match up really well together, so that's a great easy strategy to teach. And I love using the structure of the lead and the ending to teach students how to use that lead and ending. So that's just one of my favorite books, and I always start the year off with that. Another favorite book that I have for narrative is Those Shoes, and I like to use this book after The Sandwich Swap because it is a great book to teach theme and character and story structure, so I like to use it in both reading and writing, and I also use The Sandwich Swap in both reading and writing. But this one has more like a lesson. It's a little bit of, well, they both have a lesson, so that doesn't really make sense. But I like the sandwich swap first because it's a little bit easier to read, and it just has like that good lesson about respecting each other's differences, and just because we don't we like different things doesn't mean that we can't be friends. So I really like that. Perfect for the beginning of the year. Okay, and then my third narrative book, because those are a little bit more serious topics, but this one is just humorous, and it's just nice to have a nice humorous book, and it's called Bedhead. So I love reading this to especially third graders. Third graders love this book, but I have used it in third, fourth, and fifth grade, but it was definitely in third grade was like my go-to book. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about opinion, which is, oh, I moved it. A pig parade is a terrible idea. This book is so cute and funny, and it's perfect for teaching opinion writing because it uses very good opinion language. It also is written in an essay structure, and there's plenty of transition words, so it's excellent for teaching transition words. And then like the introduction of the paragraphs of the reasons, my first reason, my second reason, my third reason, really good introduction of reasons. So there's so much you can teach out of this, and because it's so funny and so humorous, the kids are going to be bought into it anyway, so you could teach anything from this book just because the kids love it. So you have to have, if you teach opinion writing, this is like a book that you have to have. So there's so much that you can do with it. And for informational, I really love Seymour Simon. It can be a little bit tougher for third grade, but definitely for fourth and fifth grade. For third grade, I like Butterflies by Kevin J. Holmes. And so I really like, I also, when it comes to nonfiction, whatever book I'm using to teach reading, I also use it to teach writing so that I can get the most bang for my buck. So having those books, like having books that you're really familiar with, will help you get more familiar with them as a teacher so that you can grow your teaching craft, but also your students will be able to talk about those without even having the book in front of you. So for example, the sandwich swap, I talk about that book all year long, and we don't even have to have the book sitting in front of us, and we can talk about the book, about the lead and the ending. And I'll see some students, if you've read the sandwich swap, it starts off with the beginning line and the ending line mirror each other. And so the beginning line is, it all began with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it ended with a hummus and pita sandwich. And then the end is, and that's how it all began, with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it ended with a pita and hummus sandwich. So students will borrow that structure of line throughout the year. So they'll use it in narrative, but I've had students use it when they're doing like a literary response, like if they're writing in response to reading, and they're like explaining the theme of the story or the lesson learned, or they just find very creative ways to use it. So I'm always impressed by some of the ways that students use mentor text to create their own sentences, so, and other parts of their writing. Okay. All right. So so I've done informational, poetry, and opinion, and I did not do poetry. That's what I meant to do next. So Christine O'Connell George is my go-to author or poet for teaching poetry. And my favorite book of hers is Toasting Marshmallows, and it's all camping poems. And you can see this book's been loved. I definitely have spilled some things on this book, but there's so much that you can teach out of this. So even if you're not teaching a poetry unit, there's so much that you can teach out of this book for like word choice and description that you could even tuck into informational or opinion writing and narrative writing, of course. So that's the first tip. So identify mentor texts in each genre that you teach, and those are like your go-to. Okay, so if you don't have books that you that are like your go-to mentor text for each genre, then just think about which books that you really enjoy, and also think about which books your students really like right now. So I'm kind of like stuck on my favorite go-to books, but I'm always looking for new ones, but I'm still stuck because they've been part of my teaching for so long. So I think one of the best things that you can also do is just pay attention to the books that your students like, because if they like reading them, then they're going to like learning from them to grow in their writing. Okay, tip 2, name that strategy. So this is just really simple and straight to the point. Whenever you're teaching something, whenever you are teaching a specific craft move or something specific in writing, give it a name. So, or also when you see a writer doing something specific, name it. So this does 2 things. One, it creates awareness for what they are doing so that they can repeat it in the future. That's really important. If they know what they are doing, they can repeat it in the future. The other thing is that it helps them understand that writers do specific things. Like writers, we don't just write and it comes out all beautiful and purposeful. Like writers have to learn how to do specific things in their writing, and that there's always things that we can learn to grow as writers. This in essence will help students to also understand the importance of revision. And I know as teachers that it can be really hard for students to get our students to want to go back and make their writing better. If they think they're done, they think that that their writing is good the way it is. We don't need to look back over it. We don't need to reread it. We don't need to do anything to it. It is perfect. And it's not. Like, no writing can always be improved. So, not that we want to like squash hopes and dreams, but writing, there's always room for improvement. So by teaching students that strategies have names, this just kind of reiterates the idea that we can learn how to do specific things in our writing to make our writing better. Okay, I feel like I said the same thing like 6 different ways. So, for example, when I teach endings, so this is from the Narrative Writing Unit. So this is endings. So the endings, I have like specific names for the endings. And so when we try those out in our writing, then I have students label it so that they know, like, this is what I did as a writer. I did something specific. I didn't just write an ending. I wrote about the lesson learned, or I used the into the future ending strategy, or I used a significant statement. There's something specific that you're doing. That is like one of the biggest ways to grow your craft as a writer. Okay, tip 3. This is for you as the teacher. List your top 5. So with this one, you're going to make a quick list of 5 things that you think are important to teach writing effectively. So not like things that are frustrations to you right now, or things that you don't have, or things that you need that you feel like are getting in the way of you being a good writing teacher. Just 5 things that you think are important to teach writing effectively. So I'm going to share my list with you. I feel like the narrator would have said she did not, in fact, bookmark it, because I did not. I thought that I did, but I did not. Okay, so my top 5, what I think is important to teach writing effectively, and they're probably going to sound familiar. Number 1, conferring with students. Number 2, differentiating with small groups. Number 3, reading like a writer and teaching students how. And number 4, allowing choice to integrating that into what is necessary or essential. So I know, like, a lot of times we're not able to provide choice, especially like if you are in a test prep grade, like in 4th or 5th grade. There's a lot of times throughout the year you don't have opportunity to give choice, but I think that you can definitely integrate it into your day. So, and then number 5, use mentor text to teach language and sentence structure. So those are my top 5 things that I think are important to teach writing effectively. So those are mine. You can write yours. So now you're going to list things that you would like to do more often, and that's part of developing your teaching craft. So things that you want to work on to get better. So one thing that I feel like I used to be better at, but as time has gone on and get busier and busier, I don't make a lot of time to write for myself. And I think that's one of the best ways that you grow as a writing teacher is writing for yourself. So taking the time, like whatever genre you're teaching, to make time to just write some of that yourself. That's something that I would like to do more often. I feel like I've done that in the past, but I haven't done it as much because I use a lot of examples that I used in the past, but that doesn't mean that I can't continue to grow and try more out. So there's mine. I'm sharing that with you. Okay, so that's tip 3. Final tip. Tip 4 is grab your mentor text. So this could go 2 different ways. So you could actually have more than one, of course. But so find one professional writing book to be your mentor text. So I'm going to share with you I grabbed my 4 absolute favorite writing mentor texts. Actually, I grabbed 5. And these are like some newer ones that I actually haven't even completely read. Well, some of them are new, that I'm still kind of going through because there's so much to learn from them. So one of my favorite books is Small Group Writing Conferences by Holly Slaughter. And I actually worked with Holly a lot in Pinellas County Schools. And so this book is really good if you are trying to figure out a way that you can do small group writing conferences effectively in your classroom. She does an amazing job of laying it out and really helping you see what it could look like. So I definitely recommend that. And I think small group writing conferences are really, really important, especially as our writing block gets cut shorter and shorter. One of the biggest things I hear from teachers all the time is that I don't have time to meet with my students one-on-one, or I can't get to all of my students. Then you need to be doing small group writing conferences. And that's something that is just going to help you change a lot of things in your classroom and help you just reach more students with the little amount of time that you have. My next writing book to share with you is Crafting Nonfiction. This one is really good for like specific, really super specific strategies. I love, these are the kind of books that I really love for like specific craft strategies to teach in writing, because it gives specific things like we just talked about, name that strategy. So these kinds of books that give like really specific things that you can teach, I love finding books like that to try out new things and new lessons with my students. And it really invigorates you and helps, like when you learn how to teach something new, it feels so good, especially if your students find it exciting or find it fun. So I love finding books that give like super specific actionable things I can put in my classroom. This one is a gem, big book of details. So we're always saying like add more details. Well, what does that look like? This book will show you. Very specific. Love this. I have tried out many things in this book, and I've got a few blog posts that I talk about this book as well, and I'll link to those in the notes. The Unstoppable Writing Teacher. I love how Colleen Cruz, she really takes all the objections and things that we say that stop us from doing our best teaching and writing. She takes those and she unpacks them and dissects them and helps us find solutions to those problems. This last book is the Writing Strategies book. If you are a fan of the Reading Strategies book by Jennifer Sarabello, then you're going to love the Writing Strategies book. Again, really specific, actionable strategies that you can try out in your classroom. So as a teacher, you can't really take one book and teach all the things from that one book, but it's nice to have some go-to places when you're struggling with something to figure out a solution to the problem that you're having. So also, got my little cheat sheet of notes here. With the last tip 4, not only finding a professional book, you can also look at books that you read yourself to read like a writer, just on your own, independently, noticing certain things to help you grow as a writing teacher and knowing and finding those specific things. So I pulled my favorite read aloud. I'm like buried in stacks of books right now. So The Tiger Rising is my favorite read aloud. And rumor has it that there's a movie coming out. That's exciting. So there's so much good writing in this book. And so I just grabbed the first sentence that I saw, or I flipped through a few, so it wasn't technically the first sentence that I saw. But I just quickly went through and I just, a sentence that I was like, okay, I could teach something from this. So in chapter 19, the very first sentence says, Beauchamp hit the brakes. We're almost there, he said. You got to close your eyes so it's a surprise. Okay, so what did the writer do right there? Beauchamp hit the brakes. That's action, character action. And then the next sentence is dialogue. So the writer balanced action and dialogue. So that's a really tough thing sometimes for students to understand, balancing action, thoughts, and dialogue and description. So that's something you could, right there, I found two things, well, one thing, but two sentences that I could teach for narrative writing right there. So there you have it. Those are my 4 tips for teaching writing with confidence. This concludes the 5 C's of teaching writing with confidence video series. So what are your next steps? Well, if you're looking for more support in teaching writing, I have writing units for narrative, opinion, informational, and poetry writing. If you're looking for even more support and more ELA resources, then you might find the Literacy Loft membership to be right for you. This is a membership site for ELA teachers in grades 3 through 5, and you have access to all of my resources for grades 3 through 5. It includes not just reading and writing resources, but it's heavily emphasized, and it will be opening July 29th of 2019. That's the next time that it's opening. And you can get on the wait list by clicking the link below. And I'd love to see you in there. You can also join us in our free Facebook group, the Literacy Loft Teachers, where we talk reading and writing and grades 3 through 5. And if you have any questions or anything that you are still struggling with, or you want to discuss further, or you'd like to see more content on in regards to teaching writing or reading, feel free to comment below, or you can send me an email at jessica@theliteracyloft.com. And until next time, I will talk to you later. Bye.